Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have critical mass almost at about 160 people. We have around 500 people registered today, so wanted to welcome everyone into our COVID-19 series. My name is Saeed Amidi, and I oversee our healthcare practice here at Plug and Play, and really excited to give the welcoming remarks and to introduce our speakers for today's session. If we can go to the next slide, perfect. So the agenda for today, I'll be doing a quick opening remarks. We'll have a fireside chat and I will introduce our speakers, our CEO Saeed Amidi, as well as Jochen Hurlebaus, Dr. Jochen Hurlebaus from Roche. Then we'll have a curated, moderated fireside chat and 4 startup presentations. These are startups that Roche is currently engaged with through our program in Munich. As you may have heard last week, we announced our COVID-19 Accelerator program at Plug and Play. If anyone missed it, there was a press release that went out last Thursday. We have a series of events coming up in April around the different topics that we announced around enterprise and supply chain. Tomorrow we'll have the deskless workforce session taking place at 8:20, then a supply chain session next week and the following week. And you could visit our website at the link at the top to register for any of these events or see any of the upcoming events that we have planned. Last week, we did announce the program, which essentially will start off with healthcare, supply chain, and enterprise tech. We'll be also looking into retail and fintech. And just as a reminder for anyone that's new to Plug and Play is one of the largest innovation platforms. We do 3 main things at Plug and Play. We invest in startups anywhere from pre-seed, seed to Series A. And we invested over 200 startups in previous years. We run corporate innovation programs with over 400 corporations where we connect them to startups for pilots, licensing deals, and investments. And this is done through the 3-month accelerators. And then the last component of our business is real estate. So both commercial real estate for startups and tech companies, and where we have our headquarters, we actually have over 400 startups in the building, 180,000 square foot building, somewhere that we all miss being in during these current times with all the energy and activity in the building, but look forward to going back. And in the meantime, we've moved all of our events to virtual, including webinars and selection days and expos as well. The topics that we'll cover through our health track are outlined here. As many of you know, there's shortage of ventilators. There's many companies working on vaccines, drug discovery, prevention solutions, symptom trackers so that we can avoid patients going to the hospital when it's not necessary, and the overflow that we're having within hospitals as well. So we're looking at startups in each of these different categories, and we'll be doing a series of challenges and sessions that will really bring these startups onto the platform and connect them with the corporations that could really help them scale. And the reason we're here today, so we're very excited to introduce our speakers for today. I'll give a little bit of background and history about our program, Startup Creasphere, that we started with Roche, officially launched September 18th, 2018. This program is based in Munich, where we also have a beautiful office there with startups in both our healthcare practice, insurance, and retail. And that program really started initially thanks to Jochen, who is on the line as well. That program there, Roche has done over 20 pilots with the startups in that program. It's a highly engaging platform where the startups that you'll hear from today have active pilots running with Roche. And so we're really excited to both feature and hear more from Roche and what they've been going through the past month or so, but also how they approach innovation, as it's been a very unique experience working with them, and their level of commitment, both internally from the business units and the leadership team, has really led us to some key engagements coming out with the startups and the different people that interact within the ecosystem. So with that, I'd like to introduce Saeed Amidi, our CEO, who will be conducting the fireside chat with Dr. Jochen Hurlebaus, and he's head of digital innovation at Roche, and also our colleague Simon Maurer, innovation manager at Plug and Play, who will be moderating the session. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to Simon.
Thanks, Netta. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to offer some initial housekeeping items before we kick the fireside chat off. So for the next half hour, we'll have the fireside chat, and I'll be receiving Q&A. In the bottom right hand of your screen, you can see a little Q&A button. So if you have a question through the webinar, click that, type your question in, and we'll do our best to get those at the end. And then following our Q&A session, we'll move straight into the startup pitches, where we'll also have some opportunity for some Q&A. So really excited for this morning, and I'll hand it over to you, Saeed and Jochen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Jochen, for joining us in this webinar. This is becoming a new way to work, to meet, to hopefully give value to our community. Last week, I had an incredible fireside chat with Medicus of Vesco, which is one of our automotive corporate partners. And unfortunately, because they have 10 plants in China, more than 10,000 people, they had an event in Stuttgart right before with some Chinese visitors, and that was the cause of them having the first cases in Germany. And quite frankly, when we talked to Medicus and he said how he dealt with it was very helpful for our other corporate partners, because you never know how you react till it's actually happened to us. And I'm unfortunately want to mention we had 2 cases among my colleagues, one in Europe, one in US, and Medicus' talk was incredible helpful for us. Plus he shared his best practices manual, which we shared with whoever wants it. So this is how we initiated this speaker series. But Dr. Jochen, I wanted to go to the beginning. Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, hi everybody. Hi Saeed, and hi to your team. Thanks for having me today. And of course, how could I ever forget how we met and started this successful relationship. So actually I met first Julia from your team in Boston at an event, and at that time we have been looking in how to engage with the startup ecosystem and really benefit from startups. I always have believed in this symbiotic benefits that you can create between startups and big corporates if you do it right. And then I came to California, and you were so nice to host me there and have a discussion. And so yeah, that's how it started, and never regretted it, to be honest.
Yes, I remember you came to our headquarters and you were in search of finding some partner to go through this journey of working with startups. And I remember we had a great discussion. And then I believe I came to see you in Munich, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, you did. You came to Munich, and we went to Penzberg, our site outside of Munich. This is actually very close to the Webasto sites that you just mentioned. So where the first outbreak in Germany did happen. Yeah, in Penzberg is a big site for us. It's actually the only site for Roche where we have pharma and diagnostics operations and R&D in one site co-located. We have about 6,000 people there, also produce some of the tests or some elements of the tests for the COVID testing. But yeah, it's a big site, and for you it was probably a little bit a different world, somewhere in the forest in Bavaria. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that also, and was a good insight.
Yes, it was fantastic, and I must say you're a great tour guide, because you were kind enough to pick me up at, I believe, Sofitel by the railroad. And then you drove really fast in the Autobahn. I remember I was a little bit scared, you know, after giving me a quick tour of downtown Munich. We went to Penzberg, and I met the rest of your colleagues, and we presented what we're going to do together. Mm-hmm. And maybe for the audience, you can explain why we are working with 2 batches, roughly 10 startups every 6 months, and what is Roche would like to achieve from this relationship?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, clearly one reason why Plug and Play was a good partner for us, because we are a global company, right? And we wanted to engage with the leading company for accelerators globally that can help us to really find the best startups globally, right? We have our headquarters of Startup Creasphere in Munich, but clearly we are looking for globally the best startups. And then we are looking for a program that is very hands-on, right? We wanted to engage with people and the startups. So we said, yes, we are an innovation team, but we don't want an innovation startup zoo where we have only a few people of Roche interacting with startups. We wanted to make sure many people interact with startups. And also, I think the variety of industries that Plug and Play has, the different verticals, is a very, very good inspirational aspect of the programs you host. And, you know, we have seen that, for example, with a company like Reflect in our batch, an augmented reality company, definitely not at all our expertise, but you basically found very quickly a startup, it's a bit more advanced startup, but a small company that fits extremely well to our needs. And so I think this combination of having the diversity of startups, an open innovation approach, having good startups globally, that was actually what made for us the difference.
You know, if I can also mention, Roche was the primary reason we opened the health practice in Munich, but I am also very pleased that you welcome open innovation. And now we have Sanofi and other groups also on the platform. Can you comment for me, why are you ready to do open innovation with other companies on the same platform?
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, I'm still wondering what effect the Oktoberfest played in the decision to open the Plug and Play office in Munich. There might also be an aspect here, but no, jokes aside. Open innovation, I mean, especially in healthcare, and you know, it's a very complex industry where you need a lot of stakeholders to implement new solutions. And if you look, for example, at Sanofi, the other founding member, this is the Sanofi Consumer Health, right? So they have a very different expertise on how to engage, more like with consumers. We have now also some providers included. So we wanted to make sure we have, from the beginning, when we talk about an innovation, a new topic, all the stakeholders engaged, because what does it help if we develop a nice technology, a nice solution, And then after we have that, then we try to convince somebody else to pay for it or to use it, right? So really this bringing all the stakeholders together and openly share their ideas and also the needs for an innovation.
Wonderful. I recall in some of the expos that I came to Munich, we had, I think, more than 10 of your colleagues flying from Switzerland, flying from your other international hubs to meet the startups. And let's say, what would success look like to you in 2019 from roughly the 20 startups that went through the program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so from the 20, well, I think it was 27 now, the last 7, they are a little bit younger. So we finished the last batch in February. So, but from the 20 before, we have 10 now that are actually integrated into real collaboration projects, which is more than I would have expected, to be honest, when we started this 2 years ago. But then there we have really contracts. We have, I think, 3 of them where we are working with hospitals and patients together. So we are actually already addressing needs of patients, changing clinical workflows, creating data. We have one where we have joined a clinical trial together with the startup. So this is for us what success looks like. We really implement these solutions in projects.
Wonderful. You know, Ola, the CEO of Mercedes, told me one day that what we want to do is to reach out and meet technology and entrepreneurs and bundle it with our capabilities of scaling, production, global, and that makes us implement faster. Is that, do you believe that as well?
Yes, I think that's exactly the same situation for us. And if you talk to our startups, and maybe later on, you'll also hear something from the startups that are pitching, that's what they see as a benefit. I mean, we are the market leader globally in vitro diagnostics, so we can open a lot of doors for startups. And that starts already during the batch when we bring the startups to customers to get feedback to their solutions. That helps our colleagues, our country representatives to also understand the value of a solution from a startup and the needs of the customer. And that's where it already comes together. And then at the end, yes, we can help with scaling, we can help with rolling out, whereas the startups can help us quickly iterate new solutions and technologies that are needed by the market.
Wonderful. And if I can tell you, we also, you refer to it, supply chain and other verticals we have, which is like materials and packaging. And quite frankly, when you would like to implement a technology, it's not only the biotech. You need to have production capability, supply chain capability, and it is for us is getting the product to the market faster. This used to be only in software or digital goods, but now we hope to do it jointly with Roche in diagnostics, bringing it closer to the customer or out of hospitals and labs. Am I correct on that?
You are correct on that. And so I think you're speaking to an area where you also see still quite some potential within our collaboration. We haven't had so much interaction yet with Startup Creasphere, your team and our operations colleagues, but definitely something we have on the radar.
Wonderful. And, you know, coming to COVID-19, because I think right now is the time that we have to come together and hopefully solve the challenges of not only health, but communication, working from home. So there is a lot of challenges that are going to come up. I know Roche has done a great job with the test, and I heard that you are shipping large quantity to US. Can you tell us, was this already developed, or did you speed it up, or anything you can shed light on it for us?
I think there were certain things that have been sped up, but not just by us. And I think it's also interesting to look back. If you know, with the SARS virus in 2003, it took 5 months to get the sequence of the virus that you could actually even start developing a genetic test. Now this time, as soon as the Chinese had isolated the virus, it took 2 days to do the same, right? So after 2 days, mid of January, already a company in Berlin, a small biotech company, developed the first test. And then developing the test itself is yeah, today I would say there are standard technologies to do so. Of course, you have to work well to get a very good test, but then also what we did on our end, we had to bring it to the fully automated system. So in the big laboratories, where you can do a few hundred tests per hour in an automated way, and then the FDA had to approve it. And that was a record, and you can see what is possible if there is a need. The FDA took 24 hours to approve our test. Usually that can take many, many months, but they of course prioritized that. So I think there are a few things that come together in such a crisis situation. Of course, I'm sure our colleagues in production, logistics, everybody had to work day and night to get that done. But the same obviously has happened by other parties that also have now similar tests on the market.
That is great. That is great. And I know that you have clinical trials for COVID-19. I think it was public. Again, I would love to know how long that have been going on, and this emergency that we live in, how much extra effort or speed you could bring to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the clinical trials for medications, it also started in January, and I know in China, of course, not only our drugs, but they tried different drugs to see if they have a benefit. Also here, I think what we know today about the science, what we know about the virus and how quickly we can characterize such a virus helps a lot. So we have a drug that is actually usually used more for inflammation and arthritis. And apparently in China, they figured out that certain patients that have really severe symptoms, they have kind of an inflammation, an overdrive of the immune system. And then they tried our drug and it seemed to have worked. Now what happened, we had tried to start a clinical trial there. At the end, actually, China put it into the guidelines, but then they ran out of patients. So they didn't have any patients anymore. So then we went to the US, and there's an official trial that started now, and we also have trials ongoing in Italy. So what would that mean? I think it's the same situation. There has been time pressure to set this up. I mean, you have to really set it up in a proper way that you can really differentiate what is the effect of the drug and what is just the natural way. I mean, luckily a lot of people recover by themselves from coronavirus. So you have to make sure you can really identify the benefit of the drug. But then our pharma CEO, I mean, he told us last week that they are starting now to produce as much as they can of the drug, even if it's not clear if it actually works or not, but just to be prepared in case it is successful and that we actually have enough of the drug available. Now, I think what is also interesting, you have also startup companies that have looked a little bit closer on the virus and the protein structure of the virus. What is the expressed protein? And then they have, with machine learning based algorithms, they have looked for other existing drugs that are already on the market. I think there's a list of 60 or 70 that have been found that are approved by the FDA and that are now tested in similar trials to see if they actually can help treating certain patients here. So a tremendous effort of the industry and the universities, and I'm also convinced that will help us to find something very, very soon.
Wonderful. That is fantastic. We really appreciate your effort, Roche's effort, Novartis, all of the drug companies in the world. And I think the priorities, the innovation priorities, has really put this in front line. And I believe and I hope that is how we're going to solve it. And if I may ask, because sometimes even when we started working in September 2018, I always say innovation, you need to have urgency. And specifically, startups have much more urgency than the big corporations. We kind of say they are in a different time zone because they need to do things faster or else they don't stay alive. And I hate to say COVID-19 gave this urgency to everybody. I'm not sure if you are aware of it or no, but with Munich Re has a challenge to make a non-invasive ventilator, and the deadline, I believe, is Monday, but we feel you could design, build, like not a sophisticated ventilators, but the whole cycle of innovation, at least in this case, is becoming shorter. Do you think there is a learning we could learn from this and keep this mindset that we can do things faster, better, sooner, and hopefully with less money? Because if you shrink the development cycle, you spend less money. What is your thought about that?
I mean, I fully agree. Innovation takes some pressure, right? You need to have some urgency, some reason to act. I also fully agree that this very special situation shows that it is possible, actually, that big companies can almost act like startups. And the good thing is they have a lot of capabilities and also a lot of money to do things. And yeah, the ventilator is a great example where, you have Dyson, like a vacuum company out of the UK now producing ventilators. In Italy, it's Decathlon. I don't know if you have heard that, a French company. They're using diving masks, and they have rebuilt diving masks into simple ventilators, but that also is sufficient for thousands of patients. So you can see what also big companies can do if there is a pressure to do so. So yes, I hope some of that will stay, and that people will also see that actually how much they can help, how much they can contribute to something where there's an urgent need, and that should motivate people to maybe after that also sometimes be a little bit more and say, hey, there's a problem. Yes, it's not concretely on our radar at the moment, but actually I think we can solve it, so let's just do it.
Coming back to a little bit personal, and I must say, we work with about 400 corporations around the world. Some of them have more urgency to work with startup, more urgency to do digital transformation. It has been great working with you personally, because I think you have like more degree than I have ever seen, plus the MBA you have. What is like, and you're the head of innovation and our main contact for this project. What is the learnings you have got from working with startups in the last 2 years that you can share with other large corporations, pharmas, medical companies? Let's say if you had 5 learnings, what would it be you would tell to our colleagues? internally as well as externally? What do they need to do internally to get people ready?
Yeah. So, internally, what was surprising for me, but I have seen that at Daimler with the startup Autobahn also, when I saw the pitches of the startups, and then also the engineers that have been working maybe for 30 years within a big car company, but they were super excited to work with startups. So, and I was thinking, okay, why is that? But it's quite natural because these people went to university, they trained to do research, to develop new things, but then they are kind of stuck for 30 years in their regular, yes, let's develop the new car, the next generation, but they probably don't have a lot of opportunities to think outside the box. And we have found in Roche also quite a lot of people that said, hey, this is exactly what we need to do, right? And so we didn't really go through kind of from top down and said, okay, now let's identify people in your teams that could help us, and they probably want to work with a startup. We went more like the bottom-up approach, and these people then they took a lot of time. I'm sure they did their regular job at least as good as before, but in addition, they also worked with the startups and engaged, and then they infected other people, and other people came on to the Startup Creasphere platform. So I think that was one of the biggest learnings, that these people exist. You can motivate them. Of course, you have to give them some kind of a credit. But that's not money. That's giving them the freedom to work with startups, giving them the opportunity to present together with the startup. So really the more simple things about the topic itself, and not about any fancy process or stuff.
In fact, if I can add to what you said, we feel there has to be a champion like you coordinating the effort with different business units. But if the business units start with the challenge and they are involved in selecting the startup and then doing the pilot, then rolling it out is not a problem. So we feel, as you said, it's good that if there is some people in different business units that on top of their normal work, they want to do this interesting work. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you're correct. And then of course, yes, it's important to mention this interesting work fits still with their overall strategy, right? And I think, and we have heard that from several of them, it actually helped them to advance faster with their strategy or their future roadmaps, because they have learned so much from the startups. And they have potentially even gotten a solution that solves them a problem that they thought we probably have to solve it ourselves. And the augmented reality is actually a good example, where people were thinking, oh, we have to develop here something for the next 3 years. But then it turned out there is something out there which we can immediately use.
Wonderful. Because I mentioned Mercedes a few times, I have to mention Porsche and Volkswagen Group. They do a lot of pilots with us. And I am pleased to say that a couple of our startups are in the Porsche Cayenne, the all-electric car. And they, from the time Porsche met them till the time that they chose the technology to implement it, took 18 months. And in the automotive industry, that never happens. Do you feel we could do the same thing? Like the urgency of this COVID-19 has really taken healthcare by the storm. But do you think we could keep this speed, not as much as it is now, but can there be a learning from these ventilators that they were built in, I believe, less than 30 days? Hopefully your test and, the drugs that will treat this. Do you think there could be something good coming out of this COVID-19?
So I think what I see also in the digital health space is that now a lot of solutions that actually have already been available are suddenly becoming super exciting and people are starting to use them. I think I just saw statistics that more than 50% of the doctor visits are now virtual suddenly, right? And it was not because the technology was not there, it was there, but there were barriers, right? There was no reimbursement in some cases. So this is changing rapidly. We have also, if you look at FibriCheck out of our program with their app for atrial fibrillation, they are designing now care plans with hospitals in certain countries to avoid any visits to the cardiologist, right? To just do it remotely. Or baby scripts also from our program, they have said they have a 10 times increase in the number of registered pregnant women in the last weeks. That also say, you know, we want to have prenatal care, but we want to remove the doctor's visit. So I think that kind of change there's a lot of potential because technology exists, but it hasn't just been adapted for many, many reasons.
Yes, you know, when we had what we call COVID-19 super deal flow last week, the interesting thing is when we announced something, we would have been happy to have 100 people show up and be excited. And it's a long flight from Munich to San Francisco. But even though we did it in less than 7 days, we had 1,800 people in that selection day. And I really think that is a big learning of face-to-face meetings. But I think in the future, we will have face-to-face meeting, plus we will have much bigger audience online. Similar to what you talked about telemedicine. I really think it's going to stay with us much stronger after this terrible event is behind us. So maybe if you can give us some closing remarks. As far as I am concerned, I really am excited to move all our activities digital, like this fireside chat and the 4 great startups that are going to tell what they have done with Roche. But any closing remarks on your side?
Yeah, no, I'm also looking forward to continue our collaboration. We have some really great startups, and you'll see some of them now also in the pitch session that are also working with us to solve the problem, the big problem. And I'm, as always, optimistic, despite the really, really difficult times at the moment, that this will also bring some good stuff, some good for the world, especially on how we can all work together to solve such problems and help people in need.
Wonderful, Dr. Jochen. I look forward to going to Burger and Lobster with you soon in Munich. And it is really great having you with us, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Saeed.
I turn it to you, Simon.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. That was a great conversation. Jochen, we had a question here about the big challenges around getting our arms around the crisis from a diagnostic perspective and around the testing. Maybe you could speak to some of the big challenges that you're seeing out there with respect to just even knowing how big the crisis has become.
Yeah, so of course, you know, I mean, as we discussed before, developing the test is one thing, getting it approved, doing the necessary test, the validation of the test. But then I think the testing, there's obviously a whole other chain of things that need to be in place, right? From a logistics perspective, which people do you test? It's clear you cannot test 300 million patients or citizens in the US in one day, right? It also doesn't make any sense. So you need triage tools, and you will see later from Medicus or from Informatica what they have built to triage patients. you need monitoring tools to make sure, okay, this is the patients I have to follow up. And then we also need additional tests. So we need tests, fast tests. There have been also some developed and launched the last weeks. So it's the whole multitude of who do you test, how do you manage the sample flow, and that needs to come together. And that's why it's also not one company that can solve it. It's actually a multitude of people and companies that have to work together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that really segues nicely into the next question, which is, once the sort of crisis came to the fore, we're seeing from the news that Germany's really been an exemplar in the response, and curious about what your thoughts are in relation to that. But also, how did you and your team organize once it was obvious that this was going to be a big situation?
Yeah. So I think to the second part of the question, I think the teams were pretty quick in looking at it and starting to think, how can we develop a test, and how can we do that now? Because we have seen that before, there were other crises where new pathogens came up. So we have kind of a plan in place. What do we do in such cases, and how do we mobilize? I mean, we also have to mobilize on other tests, because now you have a lot of people that are actually having a sepsis, they're having inflammation. So we have to reschedule our production, and we have to use more tests of certain types and less tests on others. So it's not just on that, it's really has influence on our whole product portfolio. Now, when you look at how did the different countries adapt to it, I think what could have been done better is to do it a bit more systematically. I mean, even within countries, and that's also in Germany, you have different rules, different ways of counting, right? For example, in some countries, you don't even test for the virus if somebody has died. So you get different types of statistics. And if you look at the media, it's also, they usually give you a number, right? They give you how many new infections. Well, honestly, that doesn't tell you anything. If you don't know how many people have been tested, you don't know who has been tested, it really doesn't give you much information. So I think there is a big lack of data. We're talking about big data, but here we definitely have small data, and that doesn't help.
Yeah, look, one of the big things that we know is that can be challenges in bringing startups and integrating them within a large global organization. And particularly in the current time, the urgency is, more urgent than ever. Maybe you could talk about how has Roche, how have you built that infrastructure to bring in startups into your business units, and how is that working in the current time?
Yeah, so I think it would probably be impossible to really bring in a startup in our infrastructure. What we do concretely with Medicus is that we have a team in place which consists, I think, of about 10 or 15 countries, so representatives from these countries that look into the Medicus solution that has been built by Medicus for COVID triaging, but also monitoring of patients. And now what we do is we try to help Medicus to bring that in these countries. So that on the one hand means you need to connect with healthcare experts that can actually then, according to the current guidelines that at the moment change basically on a daily basis almost, right? That we have some experts that can actually look at the triaging in that app and make sure it's correct, but then also connect to healthcare authorities where we have very good connections to make sure that this can be rolled out there very quickly. Now, to roll that out, obviously you cannot integrate that in a hospital EMR system or whatever. I mean, the only way is basically an app store concept or something like that.
Yeah, fantastic.
But yeah, it's more like on a helping each other out than on a technical integration.
Yeah, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how it actually works with your team. Like when the crisis came, together, how did you organize and communicate with your team to have that internal coordination?
Yeah. So since we are in digital, of course, we are very used to have the digital conversation. So for us, it wasn't so difficult to just switch everything to to virtual meetings. That has been working very well. The technology is now very good. I think it has been a bigger challenge than for the people that still have to go to produce certain things, to go to the lab, to develop certain tests. But for us, it has been good. I also have to say, I think in the company, there has been a good, from our leadership teams, a good way of managing that, of having regular check-ins, virtual town halls, because it's not only about business, right? It's also now to help people to cope with the situation, being some of them alone at home. Then in Switzerland, it's a particular situation. The parents actually have to be the teachers of their children, right? They only get the material, but there's no virtual teaching. They have to teach themselves. So suddenly they have like a completely additional responsibility. And so, of course, you have to be conscious of, you know, how do you manage that to put not too much burden on these employees?
We've got a question here, and this maybe scopes out a little bit about the general program, but as you have been engaging with Creasphere and startups, what is your process internally, and perhaps even at the moment, in need finding and discovering, you know, what are the priorities of the business units that you can meet?
Yeah, so we take a lot of time for the finding of the focus areas, the definition. So we usually start about 3 months before the program starts. And we talk to stakeholders that we know. Also here, there's not like a real process that everybody has to be asked. So we have our connections, and that grows over time. And then we go through the process of having a long list, having a short list, and then we have really, with the topic owners, which usually are business people or R&D people, they make the final selections, or we have calls with the startups, and we really match not only from technology point of view, but also from a team, because when you talk to a startup on the phone, you fairly quickly figure out, well, you know, does that also fit from a human team perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we hear that, that language around, like, we really look at the team. Are you able to break that down? Like, what are some of the things that when you are speaking with a startup that you say, yes, that team really does have the qualities of the kind of people we want to work with?
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, it's actually, there's also some stuff which you see from how the team is set up. So usually, I think we prefer if it's a diverse team, right, that has different expertise, because also healthcare is quite specific. If you have only technology, it might be sometimes a bit more difficult. But then from a team, yeah, I mean, you hear kind of about their expertise, but also their ambitions. You know, some of them are maybe too ambitious. Some of them might not directly see the value that Roche can bring to them, but sometimes this actually also can be addressed in a conversation where we have also to explain what we think we can bring and what we need. So it's not only that, you know, that it's always a team thing from the other partner. Right? It's also about this coming together.
Right. And I suppose, is there a particular sweet spot in terms of early stage, growth stage that that you guys focus on, or is it very dependent on the needs of the business?
So we usually look for startups that already have at least a prototype, or ideally even maybe something on the market. The reason is more our internal innovation model, where we are more bound to invest in these things where we can already see something and we can test something. But so we don't look necessarily at the Series A or B funding. That's less for us a relevant topic, or how old is the company. It's more about where are they with respect to the technology or product that they have.
Fantastic. And look, just as we land the plane in this Q&A section, in our last one, it was really wonderful to hear from both Saeed and Matthias about, you know, how are you personally keeping encouraged? We were talking earlier before this webcast about the incredible volume of work that happens in the digital world, but what sort of things are you doing personally to keep up with everything?
Yeah, for me, sports is really, really important. So I'm at least every Saturday, Sunday, I'm a few hours either on the bike or on the skis or whatever. So because it helps me a lot to kind of get my brain restarted.
Yeah, fantastic. And Saeed, have you any new hobbies in this whole digital landscape?
Yes, I must say I miss my golf a lot. I don't know how much I'm missing golf. So I am I used to go for a walk every day, but actually now I divide my walk into 3 different walks, 20, 30 minutes each. And I see it will refresh me and it will getting me back ready to get on the Zoom. You know, again, I love the interaction of people. I love walking people in and out of my office, but realistically now we just have to sit. And perhaps there is a new idea that you could have a Zoom brace and you can walk around with while talking. No, but realistically, it's just as Dr. Jochen said, I try to be active, walking, and I am even doing a little bit of chipping in my backyard.
Fantastic. And Jochen, that's the last question. I mean, in terms of coming out of this crisis, in terms of work systems or even for patients, you know, what do you see as the major upsides or silver linings, or opportunities that can be embraced during this time?
Yeah, I think it's really the digital health solutions that people have now experienced them, and they will say, why did I ever prefer to go to a physician, sit 3 hours in a waiting room, get infected with all the other stuff that people have, and instead of just turning on my video conference and talk to the doctor directly, right? I think that could make a huge change for the healthcare industry.
Fantastic. Well, look, this was an incredibly engaging conversation. Thank you so much for giving us your time, to both of you. And we're going to move on to the next stage of this morning, which is our startup pitches. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jochen. Thank you. Great seeing you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Friends, so the way the next section is going to run, we've got 4 startups. All of these have been working with our program with Roche and others at Startup Creasphere. So the first one is Medicus AI. So they're going to give a 7-minute pitch, and then there'll be an opportunity for about 1 minute of Q&A. And we're going to keep this thing rolling. So I'll come in straight on the 7 minutes. So if you have questions from the audience, please please pop them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to respond. So Ava, I'm hoping that that this will transition nicely to Medicus AI.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thanks very much. Do you guys have your video?
Yeah, I need to share my screen, so please can you stop yours? Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so hello everybody, panelists and participants. Thank you for the opportunity to include us in this. I'm not Bahar, as the name says. Bahar, the CEO, is not feeling well, so I'm Makram Saleh. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Medicus.
Fantastic.
And I've been closely involved with CoVive in the last 3 weeks, so it's, yeah.
Are you able to turn your video on just there? There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bahar. Right, over to you.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to go quickly through the presentation. So first, I'm gonna give you like a very quick intro, like about Medicus. So Medicus is a growing tech company. We're in health. We have different solutions. Now we're like a huge team. We're a huge from a startup point of view. We're almost 124. We started focusing on lab reports and integration with labs. So we translate this kind of health data into a much better, much clearer, this is our message, like clarity and health literacy. And it's like, and we do it in different things. So in well-being, and for doctors and for patients. I'm not gonna take a lot of time here to move into an important point. So this brings us to why we're doing CoVive. So as Medicus, we found ourselves positioned in a perfect spot in place and in time, and in terms of partnerships and markets that we're in, to provide something as an initiative. So what we're building here is not an app. It is an app in the store, but I mean it's not meant to be an app, not meant to be commercial at all. It's meant to be, it's like an initiative that Medicus started. And as Jochen said, we're working with so many partners in different countries, I'll list them at the end, to try and get them to contribute to this effort. So what do we do here? Basically, it's focused on several key points here. So first, we're trying, again, like this all starts from what Medicus brings to the table. It starts lightening the load on, like a lot of people are trying to contact healthcare providers, helplines, doctors, etc. So we're trying to help in that effort. We're trying to provide clarity in terms of like like information about coronavirus in general, about the disease, about what to do. And the two interesting things are the assessment that we provide and the test interpretation and monitoring. So I'll go through them in more details. So this is presented in the following features. We tried in this presentation to have it like very brief, one slide per feature, so that we can go through them really quickly. So first we have the triage tool, which is an assessment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I know it's kind of clear. So we give you like a risk assessment of whether you may or may not contact the virus. So this is the first step. The second step is like, now what? So after this, you have some information, what to do. And this obviously comes from the triage that we do. So depending on what we find, we give you indicators on what to do next. And this is all regional. So you start from your country and your region, if it's divided into regions, to give you like a very localized support. The other feature is giving you information. So we give live statistics, we have a newsletter and we include it here. All the timely news, we have like myths and facts, etc. So all this information, we focus here on bringing like quality sources, nothing but trusted and approved by our medical team. This is the feature that Medicus can excel at, which is interpreting results. So now we start with this SARS-CoV-2, which is we start with one test kind right now, and we are adding as the market supports more testing mechanisms. So now we have 3 as well in the working that we support. This feature is also something that you don't find a lot in this crisis, which is helping you monitor. So in case you have the condition or in case you're trying to prevent, we monitor and we ask you like very few questions. And if you notice, like we have a very simplified interface focused on only the symptoms that matter here, temperature, shortness of breath, etc., that helps us detect whether you should seek care or not very quickly. Last but not least, we're also trying to reach out to partners in the like academic field and to try to benefit from this as research data. So not only as what features before, but also as research data. So we do this anonymously, and also we have like a skill in this already from Medicus. This all, by the way, is currently we're working on the CE certification. I think you're already aware it's a huge effort, but we're trying to squeeze it like in a very, very short time, and we're succeeding in this. This is the countries that we have partnerships with, and when I say partnerships, so we have local support, we have local medical teams working with us on like providing data, on providing information about tests, etc. So this is a list of countries, and we are currently like expanding more and more, and we're really open to any kind of collaboration. We don't do integrations with labs or with healthcare because we know this technically cannot be feasible within a very short term. We do it with our clients, but not, I mean, with the like, it's not possible for everybody. So yeah, this is it basically. Thank you for the. I hope it wasn't super fast, but I think we hit the time right.
No, fantastic. And
Yeah.
look, maybe you could talk about some of the key learnings or best practices that you bring to working with big corporates or partners.
Yeah, so I don't know if I understood your question correctly, but what we do is basically, so we reach out first to people who are already in our close network. So Roche obviously is like the first and biggest partner in this. And then from there, we extend to their partners and to our close partners, so our clients, for example. And we get, first we get insights from them. So for example, some of them, we work with labs, so they are at the center of this. And we understand from them what's required. So we talk to the people, to labs in very highly affected areas and learn from them, like what do they need for other areas. So they tell us, for example, the most important thing is like in this region, let's say in France, it's very important to use telemedicine. In this region, in Germany, like, you have to reach the doctors. So how do we do it? We also provide something simple. Yeah, and this is how we do it. So again, being open on one side, like to support all these kinds of data in the back end, and at the same time to be flexible with having something out really quickly and timely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Baha. That was really terrific. Again, for our audience, we'll have your contact information and send it out to anyone who wants to get in contact.
Sure.
And we'll get on to the next pitch now. So thanks very much for spending the time with us this morning.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, folks, as we're hearing these pitches, please put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to facilitate that as we go. All right, so next we've got Informatica with Milo Wycinski. I'm sorry, Milo, if I got the pronunciation of your name wrong, but let's just pull you up. Looks like your microphone, and it looks like you're doing great. Sharing screen.
Yep. Yes, so this is great pronunciation of my surname. So I'm Milo, I'm from Informatica. I've been privileged to pitch on last year's Plug and Play in Munich. And here today, I hope that I'll be able to give you a nice presentation about what we have done about COVID-19. What was Informatica's response?
Fantastic. Milo, can you share your camera? Is that possible?
Yes, I'm trying to do that, but I have some small technical problems for some reason. I by accident disconnected the second screen, and I can't seem to reconnect. They should be right back. Just one on careful mode and everything.
Look, if it doesn't work, let's just keep going. No worries.
Okay, cool. Okay. Just give me a sec because I have to rearrange this here.
That's fine. I think in this new virtual world, we can afford to give everyone a little bit of grace.
Yeah, I have to say that the worst part, at least for me, of not working from the office is having much worse internet here. So I hope it's going to work all right.
It's a pipeline problem. I think we're all finding that our fast internet's slowing down as all of our neighbors compete.
Yeah, the first day when the whole Europe logged in from home, Microsoft Teams crashed. So that obviously happens. Okay, I seem to fix one of my problems. So just 1 minute. Thank you for your patience, and I should have it sorted out.
Well, Milo, as we're sort of sorting it out, do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you guys initially got involved with Creasphere?
So this is a story that our CEO Piotr will be much better at telling. I got involved with Creasphere last year when I was already an alumni of the program in Munich. So I don't have the much of the backstory, but it was very helpful for us to get some of the investors, but also to spread the word out about Informatica and how we help insurance companies and health providers. So it was one of the programs that we really believed helped us a lot, especially in our early journey expanding to the US.
Fantastic. Looks like you got the screen up, so over to you.
Yes, perfect. So So briefly about Informatica, because before I show you what we've done in case of COVID-19. So in general, we specialize in helping our partners, mostly insurance companies and health systems, health providers, making sure that their patients are using the right healthcare services every single time. So we've been around quite a bit because we were founded in 2012. We're currently a team of over 80 people all around the world, and we've served to this moment more than 50 customers in over 20 countries around the world. Some of those partners include Allianz Worldwide, so currently the biggest insurance company, but also just recently we started working with Microsoft Healthcare. So as we know, primary care is failing under multiple stresses, and many of those are becoming more and more visible, especially during this challenging time during the COVID-19 pandemic. There are too few healthcare workers. Many healthcare systems are expected to collapse because of that. Too many patients seeking care, and one of the reasons is because patients are on hyper alert due to COVID-19, and more patients are rushing to emergency rooms, worried about their symptoms, and this makes situations even worse. During this time, it's even more important to triage patients correctly and identify the ones who should be hospitalized from those who should stay home, isolate themselves, and then, of course, COVID-19 is currently not the only condition you might have. You still have the other conditions. You still can be sick from other things. So you have to also be able to identify those patients. So Informatica tackles this problem from two angles. Both are connected to symptom checking and self-triage. So we have our classic, as we call it, AI-driven symptom checker that can be easily embedded inside any patient portal or any channel that our partners using to communicate with their patients. And the separate component that we have created over the last 3 weeks, which is the COVID-19 checkup. And obviously the symptom checker part is to help you triage patients with other conditions, with other risks, because life goes on and you have to be able to treat those patients as well. While the COVID-19 checkup is a separate module that you can use to help your patients access a reliable source of information when they are worried about being infected by the virus. So let me switch to a short demo how it works. This is a protocol based on World Health Organization algorithm. It's an iframe component that any organization can implement free of charge via iframe or via the API. So we start from asking basic things about the patient, determine what is the risk group, so age and gender. In the next steps, we're asking about risk factors that might also trigger higher triage level and might increase the risk of being infected by the COVID-19. We ask about basic things, fever, cough. Let's say that we have an example of someone who is a little bit overestimating their symptoms. There is some coughing, but they started to be worried. So we help them find out what might be the case and what they should do next. We ask follow-up questions. Interesting thing is that we also provide some explanations about what certain questions mean. So in this case, what does it mean that your symptoms are getting worse? Fortunately, let's say that the answer is no. Let's fill out some of the remaining questions. So all of what you see here is based on WHO and CDC guidelines. So unlike our normal solution that we provide, triage solution that we provide to our customers, this part is not AI driven. This is a very solid WHO protocol visualized by Informatica, made simpler and more engaging to the end user. In this case, we have someone who should stay home and avoid going to a facility. So we recommend to isolate, not to not go to a doctor. Let other people who should be treated go there and receive care. We provide some instructions about what they should do next, so including how to maintain social distancing and what they should do, and to monitor their symptoms, to react if anything is getting worse, and to seek medical attention once it's needed. On top of that, we also provide some local guidelines. Those are provided by our partners and fully customizable, because this component is something that we don't provide to the end user, the patient. As Informatica, this is a component that any health organization can implement and adapt the results, so it helps patients in their area within their network. So we have some of companies working with us on those local recommendations. Any company that wants to work with us, help their patients get more reliable source of information, can reach out to us and customize those guidelines to help the patient. Back to the deck.
Fantastic. I've got one question. What is the main question that your potential partners tend to ask? What's the first thing on their minds when they are presented with your solution?
How to implement it fast and how to change local guidelines.
And so what's your answer?
My answer is so first part, the first question, the answer is here. So there are two ways of implementing it very, very fast. So one is via iframe. So a very similar application, just without the header, so it doesn't have any branding. You can very quickly embed inside your patient portal website or mobile application to just give access to it to your patients. And the second part is that to any organization who reaches out to us, we send them guidelines on how to customize this iframe so it matches local guidelines. So they can add local mobile numbers to call, some specific actions to take after specific triage recommendations. So all around the world, we have a bit different next steps that we suggest. And we cover quite a few geographies right now. We are available, this protocol is available in 20 languages. So a lot of different customizations and different type of recommendations.
And I'm assuming this could go beyond COVID as well, right?
Yes, of course. So this was something that we have developed.
Sorry, Milo, I just wanted to ask that quick. Thanks, Milo. I just wanted to ask that quick question at the end as it just came through. But thanks so much for the really great presentation. And we're going to hop on to our next startup. Once again, we'll share your information with all of our attendees after this.
Perfect.
And folks, no worries, pleasure. And folks, as you hear the presentations, please get your questions into the Q&A box. And let's move on to the next startup, which is Cloud MedX. And I believe we've got Tashfeen about to join the line.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Perfectly, thanks very much.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see it.
Counting down. Got it. You're online, and if you got a video, feel free to turn your video on as well.
Perfect. I don't have video. This is just a screen share.
No worries. Over to you.
All right, great. My name is Tashfeen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cloud MedX. We're an AI-driven company that provides easy accessibility to data and features to patients, providers, and payers. And as our response to COVID, we've created a COVID command and control center as our response to assist organizations that are trying to navigate this entire process. Sorry. So using AI and big data, we want to predict patient risks and automate the process of care during this COVID crisis. And we've got 3 tools in the market. The first one is a COVID self-assessment tool that patients can take. The second is a clinical decision support for physicians in the clinics and hospitals. And the third is a resource utilization tool that hospitals and other organizations can use to divert resources where they are needed the most. So the first step, if you start from the right, is a patient can take a COVID risk assessment, sort of like a symptom checker, and then the AI guides them towards patient services, whether they're labs and ERs. We are integrated into EMRs like Epic. The second step is a triage tool that physicians can use to figure out how high the patient is between high, medium, low risk, if you have COVID and other comorbidities, and what are the best treatments that are be given from resource journals and evidence-based journals. And the third is operations analytics. When are you going to have a surge in a particular area, and where the resources need to go the most? So the first can be thought of as a Waze for healthcare, and the third can be thought of as an air traffic controller for Waze. So the workflow is fairly simple. Patient interacts with our symptom checker. The AI gives them a differential high, medium, low risk, and then hands it over to a command and control center where a nurse can then guide them further on what they need to get tested or stay at home. We are integrated into the Medicare website. So if you go through Medicare, you can click on Ask Sophie, get the symptom checker done, and roll it out that way. Or you can directly go to our website where Ask Sophie is available and start interacting with it and get to a differential risk. On the hospital side, we predict surges by local geographical regions, and this can be used to not only predict where we are right now, but we are going to in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and onwards. And this can be used for capacity and resource planning. So, when you look at the holistic view of the entire map, you can figure out where the resources are needed the most, and then guide resources like ventilators, beds, access capacity. So you can use this as a guidance tool for your organization. The physician-facing tool is also fairly simple. It addresses patients' risk between high, medium, low if you have COVID and other comorbidities, and guides physicians on what are the best treatments possible if you have COVID and any other comorbidity like hypertension, congestive heart failure, and others. As a quick company background, we're funded, we've raised about $9.8 million through Series A over the last 5 years. We've analyzed over 90 million records with some of the largest payers and health systems in the country. And we've done a lot of integrations with large health systems through Epic, Medsphere, Medicare, Amazon, and others. And we have won a number of awards as well. So I'll stop here and I'll take any questions.
Fantastic. We don't have any questions in the chat box, but perhaps I'll ask you the same question I asked the last crew, which is, what is the main question that you get asked from potential partners?
So, as a previous panelist said, it's how do you get integrated? And so we have an iframe opportunity to embed our tools as an iframe in third parties, but there's also APIs that are JSON driven, RESTful in JSON. So it's very easy to integrate and communicate with our systems.
Fantastic. And in terms of the language, we got asked what languages do you guys support, and is it possible to deploy outside the USA?
So right now we're supporting English, but we do have partners that are taking it to other countries like the Middle East and Europe, where they are translating the tools into local languages.
Fantastic. All right, well, look, that was terrific. We're about at time, so I'll move us on to the next startup. But great presentation. Thanks so much. And again, we'll share your contact information with everyone on the line. Folks, I'm seeing some questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So for the audience, if you could just pop them in the Q&A, that makes my life a little bit easier. All right, so for our last startup this morning, we have Maria from Inviox. So thanks so much for joining us, and I'll hand over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you. Let me set up the screen sharing. I think it should work now.
Perfect, we can see it.
Yes, so let's see if I can also get the presentation off. Thank you for the invitation. Even though we are not too much in digital yet, we with Inviox found a niche where we can actively engage in the fight of COVID-19. But you asked us two questions in the beginning. One is, what do we normally do? And how do we respond to COVID-19 with our business at the moment? So some of you that are in the call today have probably seen us at one of the other plug and play pitches before. But to summarize, what we do in Inviox is in the area of cancer diagnostics. And we started our business because we met a patient whose cancer diagnosis got mixed up in the lab because of a pure mix-up of the biopsy sample and the according data to that. And in a typical pathology lab, we have like the tension of two areas. One is that the current processes are very manual. We have a lot of samples that have to enter the labs and have to be prepared for the actual diagnosis under the microscope. And on the other hand, there's a lot of digital movements to push for digital pathology. And to actually be able to do that properly, we basically have a need for the perfect sample, the perfect slide, the perfect image to enable a very good diagnosis, either by the pathologist or by AI algorithms that are starting to enter the market. And within that area, this creates 5 major problems that we're normally addressing. One is that unacceptable error rate I was talking about of mixing up of samples, very time-intense processes, a lot of work safety and health risky jobs to perform, delays and additional costs if a sample gets lost, if the patient has to stay longer in the hospital, and obviously a lot of paper stacks with information. And what we usually do is we have a software that helps us to collect the data from the physician who takes a biopsy sample in surgery or in local treatments like taking a liver spot or gastroenterology and these things. And we can also collect the information about the sample and submit it to the lab. And with digitizing that process that is being performed on a piece of paper today, we can also offer some functions, offer functionality and logistics like sending push notifications to a possible courier who has to pick up samples. Our other solutions is our sample container for biopsy samples and our machine which is in the lab and then automates that registration process of the sample by taking pictures, reading the barcode, and just sharing some information with the laboratory as such. And I'm keeping that very short to give you more insights soon on what that has to do with COVID-19. And the last piece, as I said, is we're taking a lot of images for these samples to improve the whole process in the lab to understand the sample better and to be able to create these images in the future. And that gives us a lot of advantages, starting from preventing these errors and possible misdiagnosis due to sample mix-up. We increase the efficiency a lot and the work safety in the lab. And with that also comes a decrease of the costs, plus the additional data that we collect helps the lab to also digitize the follow-on processes that are happening. And I mentioned before, and that's why I kept our normal business very short, what the hell does that have to do with COVID-19? And what we are currently facing in the world is a lot of test systems entering the market. I think, Jochen, you started earlier with the system that just got approved from Roche to really perform more tests with the COVID patients to understand where the virus is spreading and to understand who needs to go into quarantine, who not, how can we stop the spread, and so on. And something that appeared very recently is that the actual bottleneck of these tests is the test system as such. And I'm very happy that a lot of these systems and the Roche one just got released to the market. But on the other hand, also a huge bottleneck on the sample kits as such. So what you see on these images here are really basic virus sample test kits, a tube produced in injection molding, and the swab that you need to either go through the mouth or the nose and take the respective sample of the patient to then bring it to the lab and put it into the test system where you can actually test if the patient is COVID-19 positive or not. And what happened to Inveox was, and what got us in this extraordinary situation is that 3 factors happened for us at the same time. On the first, we, of course, with our normal business, are in very close contact with Roche, and we heard from them very early that they are expecting a huge shortage of these sample collection vessels, let's say. simply because there is not that many suppliers on the market that are currently certified to do that. And one of the major ones that you can also see here on my pictures, Copan, is unluckily even located in northern Italy, which is not very helpful to secure a supply chain of these very much needed test tubes. On the other hand, we ourselves have a lot of customers in the laboratory and hospital environment. And when Corona, let's say, happened for us as a startup first, we feared that we're going to be super touched by this crisis because we had running implementations of our labs and so on, and everything went under lockdown. All of our customer visits got canceled. But since the customers knew that we are providing them with supplies for the laboratory, they kept asking us, can you get us these test tubes from somewhere? And the third thing that happened to us was that we as Inveox, we supply our own individual test tubes, but we also have a few suppliers that help us to supply the lab with some other basic materials. So for example, you've seen our vessel for biopsy samples, but they also have large samples. And we get these from other suppliers, and we had our suppliers, existing suppliers that told us, hey, we are now switching our production fully to the virus test tubes. And this is what got us in the business of providing test tubes to our customers now as much as we can. And just to give you an understanding what's happening, we already provided 2 shipments to the medical center in the United States, 200,000 tubes. This is our shipment from this morning. It's 300,000 test kits. To give you a bit of an understanding of the volume, that means 2 Boeing 737s full of test kits. And they are just slightly enough for 3 of the hospitals here in Bavaria. And this is obviously also a huge task for us as Inveox that we got in within the last 10 days. So we ramped up a lot of processes that will help us with our core business, but also that are needed for these tubes. Because, for example, we received FDA approval yesterday within the emergency track of these tubes from our supplier and so on. And this is also a lot of great learnings. So right now we're handling that process from the manufacturer to the logistics, to the distribution, to the labs. We're asking for a lot of help from the governments, from the customers, from companies like Roche. It's very, very difficult at the moment. You cannot imagine what happens at the moment with airplanes who have to transport medical supplies. It's absolutely craziness, but also very interesting learnings. And actually, we turned that to a pretty awesome spirit in our team because they now feel that they can have an impact on the COVID-19 crisis. And
fantastic.
This is an old picture from our team. Now it looks rather like this, but everyone is pretty engaged. Just to give you something behind the curtain from our startup. So we are also feeling a mental health topic with all of our people in home office and isolation. So I'm glad that we're having coffee meetings and other meetings to help them through this phase. And maybe also as some inspirations for other startups in the call, our team came up with a kids challenge. So everyone who has kids, they are first of all allowed to join the calls. But we are also having the kids create fun toys and stuff with their parents. And actually Inveox is going to start an auction of what all of our Inveox kids build, and hopefully can collect some money that we can then use to to send some free test kits to the hospitals that we're working with.
Fantastic. Maria, I really appreciated you sharing some of the story about what you guys are doing currently, and it was a really nice way of ending all of the pitches. And so I really want to thank all of our startups this morning, including Medicus AI, Informatica, Cloud Medex, and Inveox. And of course, to Saeed and our Roche partners earlier on. I'm going to hand it back over to Neda Amidi to land the plane this morning. And thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to moderate. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Simon. It was great having you moderate the session. As always, you help it run very smoothly and help with the landing of the plane. But thank you all for joining us as well. Just to wrap things up, we will be sending a survey following the session. It'll approximately take about 90 seconds to fill. So we encourage you to fill that so that we can make the next session even better, and to hear your suggestions as well. As a reminder, we'll have the session tomorrow, and I encourage people to sign up by going to our website at pnptc.com/events. Supply chain will also have 2 events in the coming 2 weeks. And then we will also be updating our events page with any upcoming COVID-19 sessions for health, as well as other industries as things evolve and things change as well. Thank you again so much for joining, and for any additional information about Plug and Play, you could go to our website. There's many different ways, if you're a corporate or a startup or a VC or an entrepreneur or anyone, to really reach out to us to get more information. Thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day and evening. Thank you.